Way up in the Andes Mountains of Peru, looking down on the old Inca capital of Cusco, there's a structure that honestly just shouldn't be there. It's called Sacsayhuaman, and it's a puzzle that has been driving engineers and historians absolutely crazy for centuries.
And that really gets us to the main kind of mind-bending question here. You look at these walls, and you just have to ask yourself, how in the world was this thing built over 500 years ago? Especially by a civilization that supposedly didn't have iron tools, didn't have the wheel, and didn't even have a written language. How?
Okay, so to really get a sense of the challenge, let's just start with the weight. Some of the individual stones they used in these walls, well, they're estimated to be up to 120 tons. That's like stacking about 100 cars on top of each other, and that's just a single block of stone.
But, the weight is only half the story. The real magic trick is the precision. These stones are fitted together so perfectly, with absolutely no mortar, that you literally cannot slide a razor blade between them. And get this, we're not talking about simple square blocks here. These are complicated many-sided polygons, and every single one fits into its neighbors like a perfect puzzle piece.
So, what's with all the weird, irregular shapes? Well, this is where we find the first layer of Inca genius. This wasn't just for show. This wall was designed for a very specific and very brilliant purpose. It was actually built to dance.
I mean, think about it. The normal way to build is to use bricks that are all the same size, right? It's easier, it's faster, you know what you're getting. So why would the Inca go through all the extra trouble of using these incredibly complex, irregular stones? Well, the answer is literally in the ground right under their feet. See, this part of the world gets a lot of earthquakes. A normal brick wall would just crack and fall apart. But these walls, they do something incredible. When a tremor hits, the stones actually vibrate and shift around. They literally dance in place. And then, because of their massive weight and those perfectly interlocked angles, they settle right back into their original position when the shaking stops. It's just genius.
And that right there shows you just how advanced they were. This isn't some primitive building technique. This is a super sophisticated, earthquake-proof technology that's let these walls stand strong for 500 years through countless earthquakes. It's a system that modern engineers are still looking at with total awe.
Okay, so we've established the design is brilliant, but that just makes the puzzle even deeper. How did they actually shape these huge, incredibly hard stones so perfectly? Don't forget, no steel tools. So how'd they do it?
Well, there are basically two big theories. The traditional idea is just brute force. A huge workforce, using harder rocks as hammers, and just patiently grinding these stones down with sand and water for years, maybe even decades. But then there's a much wilder theory, one that suggests it was brain power, not brawn, that the Inca had figured out some kind of chemistry. Now, the people who believe this brain power theory have some pretty interesting clues. First off, some of the stones have this weird, glassy, almost melted-looking surface. Then there's this reddish, acidic mud that's been found nearby. The idea is that maybe they mixed this mud with some legendary plant extracts that were said to soften rock, creating a paste that let them basically mold the stones to get that perfect fit.
All right, so whether it was by brute force or some kind of secret formula, they shaped the stones. But that just brings us to the next impossible problem, the logistics. The sheer scale of this whole operation. I mean, it's just staggering.
Let's go back to this number for a second, because you really can't say it enough. 120 tons. Moving something that heavy today requires massive, specialized machinery. How did they move not just one, but hundreds of these giant stones?
And it's not like they were just rolling them across a nice flat parking lot. The quarries where they got these giant blocks were up to 35 kilometers away, across incredibly steep and difficult mountain terrain.
Historians figure it would have taken thousands of workers, all pulling together in perfect sync with ropes and ramps, just to drag one of these stones on its long journey. The amount of organization that takes is almost as amazing as the engineering itself. And what this all really tells us is that Sacsayhuaman is proof that moving mountains takes way more than just muscle. It's a monument to a super organized, incredibly smart society that had totally mastered logistics, physics, and human coordination on a scale that is just colossal.
So where does that leave us? Well, Sacsayhuaman isn't just some old ruin you go and look at. It's an active puzzle. It's a piece of enduring genius that is still challenging everything we think we know about the past.
The big takeaway here is that every single stone in that wall is like a silent testament.
It speaks of a deep understanding of engineering, maybe even chemistry, and for sure, logistics. A kind of genius that we, 500 years later, are still trying to fully wrap our heads around.
Which leaves us with this one final amazing question. What really is the secret of Sacsayhuaman? Was it some kind of lost technology, a forgotten recipe that let them soften stone? Or was it something even more incredible, just the limitless patience and willpower of a people who were determined to build the impossible? The puzzle is still there for us to solve.